Whenever you're ready, you can start.
Okay, so for my IOP, I'm talking about the lack and loss of identity in The Handmaid's Tale. My opening question was, how do you think your identity affects the way you are seen in society? Right.
I mean, if you identify a certain way, then people in society will see the way that you see yourself sometimes. And sometimes it's quite the opposite, where if you see yourself a certain way, people see you opposite.
Okay, so my thesis statement was, in the book The Handmaid's Tale, Congress is destroyed and a new government is established called the Republic of Gilead, where fertile women were turned into handmaids. The handmaids were used as vessels to carry the babies and were forced to have sex with the commander once a month in hopes of getting pregnant. Edward uses the loss of identity to explain how handmaids are slowly being stripped of their uniqueness and dehumanized by the new laws. Edward intended to show that in a how you say this word? Totalitarian society, people struggle to find their true selves. So, quote 1 on page 19 says, "This woman has been my partner for 2 weeks. I don't know what happened to the one before. On a certain day, she simply wasn't there anymore, and this one was in her place. It isn't the sort of thing you ask questions about because the answers are not usually ones you want to know." So, basically, this represents a lack and loss of identity because the personalities of the females don't even really matter at this point. Like, the one goes missing. In today's society, if a female goes missing, the first thing you think of is what happened to her. Like, even when your friend doesn't show up for school, the first thing you think of is, why wasn't she here? What's wrong? What happened to her? But in this society, it doesn't really matter what happened to them because they're replaced by someone, like, right afterwards they go missing. Right after they go missing, and basically it's just like they're replaced into each spaces, and I feel like that represents a lack of identity. For my second quote on page 46, it says, "She doesn't make speeches anymore. She has become speechless. She stays in her home, but it doesn't seem to agree with her. How free she must be now that she's been taken at her word." So I feel like this represents a lack and loss of identity because the one thing that Serena Joy is good at, she isn't really able to do anymore. Like, she's become speechless. It's like the one thing that made her who she is, she doesn't really have at this point because of the new laws in the society, as though she doesn't really have anyone to motivate anymore because she's a wife. She basically just has all the standards and everybody else is just lower than her. So she doesn't really have a purpose in the world anymore besides being a commander's wife. So it's like I felt like that represented a lack of identity because the one thing that she was good at didn't really matter anymore to anybody else besides her. My third quote was on page 143. "I have trouble remembering what I used to look like. I have viable ovaries. I had one more chance." So in her eyes, basically, I feel like this represents a lack of identity because in her eyes, she's starting to see that in this world, she doesn't really mean much. Like, she doesn't really matter besides what she's carrying. Like, her ovaries are the only thing that really matters to her. Well, that really matters to anyone else. And it's like you can tell that she's slowly starting to lose her lack of identity because she doesn't even really understand or remember what she looks like anymore. And you see yourself every day in the mirror and you know, this is me, this is who I am. But since she has to cover her hair and basically cover her face and nobody else gets to see her, she forgot to look at herself every day and realize that she's this person and that she is who she is because, like, in this society, she's not allowed to really look at herself anymore. So she slowly forgets what she starts to look like, what she looks like. Okay. My next quote on page 94 was, "What he is fucking is the lower part of my body. I do not say making love because that is not what he's doing." So the part that stood out to me was, and I felt like this represented a lack of identity, was because what she said was, he's like fucking the lower part of my body. He's not making love to me. So basically, it represented a lack of identity because when you have sex, we all know that it's something that's really intimate. Like, it's between you and your partner. You don't necessarily have to love them, but it's something that's between you two and that you two are supposed to cherish. So you touch each other's faces, you kiss each other, whatever you do during sex. But in this particular instance, he's not even really showing any attention to her face. He's basically showing attention to her lower part of her body. So it shows a lack of identity because it shows that the only thing that really matters is a woman's body at this point, and that their faces don't really matter or aren't really worthy and they don't really care about it. My quote on page 193 was, "There's one thing, that's one of the things they do. They force you to kill within yourself." So I felt like this represented a lack of identity because when the Republic of Gilead first started, they basically took away the woman's independence. Like, they took away their money, they took away their jobs, and they just, like, forced them to wear certain clothing and basically took away their kids. So everything that they knew from their past life was basically gone, and like it didn't really matter anymore because it was in a new society and it didn't really matter. And then I used the color red, which represented the lack of identity, because it's connected with blood and like menstrual blood, basically like the uterus. And it could also be connected with communism, because in communism everyone is expected to think the same and dress the same. And with the color red, all the women had to wear the same thing. So when you automatically saw them, you knew what they were and what they represented, even if that's not what they truly wanted to represent. And the wives often looked at the handmaids as sluts because of what they wore and like how they dressed, and basically that's how they saw them because of how they wore and things. And the supporting quote was, "It's the red dress she disapproves of and what it stands for. She thinks I may be like a catch. She thinks I may be a catching like a disease or any form of bad luck." And that was on page 10. So basically, before any of the wives even get to know their handmaids, they automatically have a type of opinion on them and basically a prejudice against them because of what they wear and who they are. So it's like you don't necessarily even know who they are, but you already have your forms of judgment on them because of what they wear. So when you see them in the color red, you automatically assume that they're sluts and like that they don't really have a purpose besides bearing kids. The next motif that I used was the Red Center and the Rachel and Leah Center. So basically, the Red Center was a place where the handmaids basically learned how to be mistresses, and they learned what their job was and what they had to do. And we all know, like from the Bible, Rachel and Leah. Rachel was the wife, and Leah was basically the mistress. She was the handmaid. So basically, it was their way of like purifying them and like telling them what their new purpose was. So it was like a representative like of identity, because you threw them into a new place and you basically just rewrote everything that they had already learned, and basically you took away their reading, you took away everything that they had learned, and you took away basically their purpose, and you gave them a new one, whether they understood what it was or not. And the supporting quote was, "The Republic of Gilead," said Aunt Lydia, "knows no bounds. Gilead is within you," page 23. So basically, it's like you're telling them that they have a new part of themselves that they don't even understand. So it's like you're telling them that the new society is a part of who they are, but they don't really have full knowledge of what they're doing or what they're even a part of. Like they don't have books to read or study up on what they're supposed to do, what their purpose is. The Red Center basically teaches them what their purpose is. So beyond what they're told, they don't really understand or know what they're actually supposed to do. The next one I had was names. And basically, the handmaids are forced to take the name of their commander with the prefix "off" in front of it. So like, for example, the commander's name was Fred, and they put the "off" in front of it, so it became Offred. And basically, they were forced to give away an essential part of who they were. Basically, because we all know when you're born with a name. So that's who you are. That's what your parents decided to name you, so that's basically who you are. And the supporting quote was, "My name is Offred. I have another name which nobody uses now because it's forbidden," on page 84. And I felt like this represented a lack and loss of identity, because we all know when someone calls your name, you know exactly who it is. Like if someone says Samira, I know they're talking to me because that's my name. That's who I identify as. So it was like, now that she's been switched around and had her new name given to her, it's like she doesn't really know who she is. And we all know that when you switch from commanders, your name also changes. So it's like you become a part of your commander, even though you don't know them and you don't really know anything besides them, besides sex and like the ceremony. That you really rarely have any interaction with them, but yet you're a part of who they are and you're basically represent them. That's who you represent. And it said, another quote was, "I must forget about my secret name and always back. My name is Offred now, and this is where I live," page 143. So basically, I think this represents a lack of identity, because the one thing that really kept her going, the one thing that really made her who she was and kept her from like fully conforming to that society was her name. But now she's slowly starting to see that she isn't really going to get out of it without causing a lot of rebellion and like a lot of issues within the society. So basically, she feels as though it's time for her to basically give up. So that was her way of just giving up her identity in total and all together. In conclusion, the women lived in a society where they weren't valued as equals, and they were forced to sacrifice their identities and what made them who they were in order to live in the Republic of Gilead as handmaids. That's it.
Does anyone have any questions?
Of course y'all don't.
All right, I'll let you go. 9 minutes and 40 seconds. Very good. That went great. I was gonna say, you did a great job.